Hi, I'm Chris, and welcome to, as it says here, a friggin' dope Chris Kendall VFX tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to fly in Motion 5, so let's open up Motion 5. Now that it's open, you want to select a motion project, and to know if it's selected, you want to make sure that there's a yellow box around Motion Project. So click on that if it isn't already like that, and set the duration of your footage to 10 seconds, and set the preset to whatever the dimensions of your footage are. Mine are 1080p, and also adjust the frame rate to match the frame rate of your camera. Mine is 29.97 frames per second. So hit open, and now you should see the motion window pop up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust the size of this so you can see every single thing you're working with in motion here. So we're going to go down to this drop down menu that says 100%. Click on that and click fit. That'll allow us to see everything that we're working with. So what we're going to do now is go into Finder and find the video that we're working with. So I already did that. So now what you're going to do is click and drag on this footage and drag it into this layers tab over here. And when you see this little green circle with a white plus in it, release the footage. Then it'll appear in Motion 5. Okay, now that we have our footage in motion, we're going to make the play range exactly as long as we need it to be. So this over here indicates the beginning of the play range, and this over here indicates the end of the play range. The play range is basically how much the play range is basically how much motion is going to play. So what you want to do is take this end of play range indicator and drag it to the end of your footage over here. That's good. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to select your clip over here in the layers tab and duplicate it by right clicking and then going down to duplicate in this menu over here. Some of this stuff might seem like old news to you if you're not a beginner in motion, but I'm trying to make this as understandable as possible. Anyway, what you want to do now that you have your duplicated clip selected is you want to take this thing called the playhead and drag it all the way to the spot where you're in the middle of jumping. So that looks pretty good. What we want to do here is we want to take me, freeze me, cut me out, and then animate me flying up for this flying effect. So first what we have to do to freeze me is we have to make this picture only 1 frame long. We don't want this to be a video clip, we just want one image. So what we have to do is make this 1 frame long by hitting I and then O. That sets the in and out points for this footage to be this frame. So now we should have a fairly still image. Yeah, one still image. This is it right here. So if I didn't already go over this, you can zoom out of the timeline down here by dragging this slider to the left and zoom in by dragging it to the right. I'm just doing it to so I can see exactly what I'm looking at, and this isn't actually completely necessary. So anyway, zoom out if you've zoomed in and go to this inspector tab over here. Now you should see 4 tabs: properties, behaviors, filters, and image. Image is selected right now, but we don't want that. So what you want to do is go to properties and click on that. Now at the bottom, the very bottom, you should see an option that says timing. When you hover over it, this little group of text shows up that says show. Click on that to reveal the timing options. So now that you're in the timing box, you should see this thing down here that says end condition, and there's a drop down menu next to it that says none. What you want to do is change this from none to hold. This is the freeze frame effect right here. So if you go back, you should notice that it's still only 1 frame long. So what we have to do is we have to make this much longer. So let's drag out the end duration by sliding this slider all the way to the right. Okay, so now we have 100 frames of just me standing in the middle of the air. So what we want to do is drag this all the way to the end of the play range. So you can just do this by selecting the right end of your clip and dragging it all the way to the right. So now you should have a bunch of frames of me just freezed in the middle of the air. Good, that's the first part of this effect. So just for organization purposes, we're going to name this layer by double clicking on the title, flying me or something I don't know, whatever. Okay, so now we have a good title on there, an okay title. So now what we're going to do is hide this layer by clicking on the check mark next to our title. And now let's drag our playhead to some part in the footage where we're not in it. In order to cut ourselves out realistically, we need to have a background image too. So let's find some spot that is in a so let's find some spot in our footage that's in the exact same position as the camera when I'm over here jumping in the middle of the air. So this frame should suffice. So let's also make this 1 frame long. Oh, let's duplicate this again, first of all, by right clicking and then duplicate. So it's good. Set the in point by hitting I and then the out point by hitting O. That'll make this also 1 frame long. Now let's freeze it by going to Inspector, Properties, Timing, End Condition, hold, and then end duration, drag it all the way to the right, and then drag this to the end of the clip. Let's actually drag the whole clip to the beginning and make it the entire duration of our play range. Okay, so what you want to do now is, just for organizational purposes, select your new still image and give it a convenient name like Clean Plate. And now you want to reveal your flying meat or something, I don't know, whatever clip, or whatever it is you decide to call it, and drag it all the way to, oh, I almost forgot something. You want to drag the clean plate to the very bottom of everything. That way it's really a background image. It's behind everything else. That's kind of how background works. Anyway, what you want to do now is you want to cut your subject out. In this case, the subject is me, so let's cut around me and separate me from my background. So click on this and hold it to reveal a bunch of different mask options. You'll see the rectangle mask, the circle mask, the freehand mask, which is basically the same thing as the lasso tool in Photoshop, the Bezier mask, which is a really complicated thing with curves and things like that, and the B-spline mask, which truthfully I have no idea what this does. So let's click on the Bezier mask because it'll allow us to draw a bunch of dots, sort of like the polygon select tool in Photoshop. So we're going to zoom in around our subject for a second by clicking on this magnifying glass and just dragging diagonally. Drag this way to get further away. Yeah, so you can scroll up to move the clip up, down rather. Scroll up to move the clip down and scroll down to move the clip up. I don't know why that is, but anyway, what you want to do now is, now that you're zoomed in, select your Bezier mask tool and use it like you would the polygon select tool in Photoshop. Just click a bunch of points right around your subject. Doesn't have to be perfect. This might take a while. Cue the time lapse. Okay, so when you're almost finished your mask, what you want to do to finish it off is connect this point with the first point you made by just clicking on the first point again. And now you should see this little picture come up that says Bezier mask with a rough outline of your subject in white with a black background. This means that our mask is done. So what you want to do is click on this weird looking thing over here and go back to transform mode. That way we can move around the mask. So let's collapse this and click on our footage again. So now that it's all separated, we should be able to move it around like this. And you can see there's two of us. But that's not entirely useful here because this isn't a cloning video, and I can explain exactly why this is happening. We didn't set the out point for this moving footage, so let's Actually, I should have named this a while ago, so double click on the name and type in moving footage. And now what you want to do is click on this button over here to go to the previous frame and hit O. That way, the moving footage ends as soon as our frozen footage starts. So now we should have this. And we have a fully separated version of ourselves. That's really good. That's exactly what we want. So now what we can do is we can animate ourselves up and out of the shot. So now what you want to do is select your still image of you frozen in the air, separated, and go into the inspector, make sure you're in the properties tab, and go down to transform position. Add a keyframe there. Basically what keyframes are is, well, I can't really explain it, so if you don't know what they are, you'll have to look them up. Anyway, drag the playhead about 3 or 4 frames to the left. If you're not exactly sure how to figure out what a frame is, just hit this button 4 times. That's good. And now what you want to do is you want to zoom this out really wide by clicking this drop down menu that says 35% and clicking the smallest measurement up there. Then you click and drag your subject all the way out of the frame until you can't see them, like at all. And now if you were to play this, you will get something that looks like this. It's not playing too well, and that is because what motion has to do is it has to render your videos for them to play smoothly. But we don't have time for all that. So let's just reduce the render quality by going into this drop down menu up here that says render and go to resolution quarter. Select that and that should play a little bit more smoothly, although as you see the footage will look more like crap. So anyway, what you want to do is click on this and it'll play. You probably missed it, that was so fast. Anyway, let's go back to before I jump in. As you can see, barely, I'm flying up. Whee! Anyway, that doesn't look very convincing because as you can see, there is no motion blur. So there are 2 ways to go about doing motion blur. You can use Motion's automated motion blur, which takes a long time to render, or you can add a motion blur filter and control the settings yourself. So we're going to do that one. So what you want to do is apply a filter to this video. So we go down to this thing that looks like a film strip and some transparent rectangle thing and click on that. Now you should see a bunch of different menus: blur, border, color correction, distortion, film look filter. I've made that myself, that wasn't there before. Glow, yeah, I made that myself too. High contrast too, that's color correction stuff. Keying, sharpen, stylize, tiling, time, and video. You should see everything but this and that. So anyway, of course, since we're looking for motion blur, we want to go into the blur thing, the blur sub menu. So let's hover over that, and we should see another sub menu that has a lot of options in it. Channel blur, circle blur, I'm not going to read all that, that's too much. So go down until you see directional blur, which is exactly the same thing as motion blur, but with a different name. So click on that. And alright, we have motion blur, but you can't see it at all. So first of all, this motion blur is in the wrong direction. So if we were to increase the motion blur by sliding this amount slider up or to the right, we would get, okay, for some reason in motion, the sliders have limits on them. It only goes up to 32, but if you're working on something where you need a lot more motion blur than that, you can actually go higher than that, which kind of makes you question why they put limits on the sliders in the first place. But anyway, in order to make this higher than the limits go, what you have to do is click and hold this number right here and drag it up. See, it's going a lot higher. And now over here you should see there's a lot more motion blur, although it looks kind of ridiculous. So yeah, as you can see, the motion blur is going from left to right instead of up and down. So what we want to do is adjust the angle and turn it to 90 degrees. And there, now it goes up and down. That's pretty good. So now, if we were to play this, it would look kind of ridiculous because it jumps from no motion blur to magically a crap load of motion blur, which is very wrong. So yeah, that's not good. what we want to do is we want to animate the motion blur from 0 to a very high value over the course of our animation. So let's skip to the end of the animation and click on this keyframe button. It's good. I've set my amount to 122, but you can set it to whatever you think looks right. Now what you want to do is go all the way back to your beginning of the clip and drag the amount down to 0. This will automatically generate a keyframe because you had one there before. So now the motion blur should gradually increase from 0 to 122.0 over the course of these 3 or 4 frames. So that's good. That's exactly how it would be in real life. Gradual motion blur. Perfect. Okay, that's good. So you might have noticed earlier that, well, for one, this mask is way too sharp, and for two, the motion blur is actually inside of the mask, so you can actually see where the mask edges are. So if I were to get rid of this animation for a second, this position animation, you would be able to see that the edges of the mask are sharp and they're not all motion blurred as they're supposed to be. So what we have to do is we have to group this and then apply the motion blur to the whole group for some reason. You want to collapse this by clicking on this little arrow thing and then right clicking and then going all the way down to group. I don't know why I said all the way down, it was like the 5th option. Anyway, now we have a new group, so we can uncollapse this video clip and drag our filter by selecting this onto the group. And now you should see that the mask is motion blurred too. That's exactly what we want. That's good. Okay, so now we have an effect that's quite similar. Oh, sorry, I deleted the keyframe. I'll have to put that back in. So yeah, bring this up here and it automatically generates that keyframe since we already have the keyframe in there. And now we should have an animation. Yeah. So let's play it. So I'm flying away. Alright, okay. So that's good. If you think it looks a little bit too fast, you can adjust the keyframes by selecting each keyframe down here. Okay, so if you can't see these keyframes, what you want to do is select this option over here, which either shows or hides the keyframes. So if this is what you see, click on this button and you'll see the keyframes down here in the timeline. So anyway, select all of your keyframes, the end over here, and drag them further to the right in order to make your animation a bit slower. And you can do the opposite to make it faster. Drag it to the left. I don't see why you would want to do that if you did it exactly the way I told you to. But anyway, I dragged it a couple of frames to the right. So let's see how much of a difference that made. That's too slow now. Just have to kind of mess with it until you get something you like. That looks fairly decent. Let's one more frame. That looks good. There's a chance I might have just put it exactly where it was before, but oh well. You know, you just have to play with it until you get what you like. So now what you do is you select this big group the motion automatically put all your clips into and collapse that. Now what you want to do, if you want to have your camera shake a little bit as you're flying off as if you had a big impact on the ground, is you want to go back into the filters and this time go to distortion and then find earthquake over here. So click on that, and so it automatically applies a pretty great earthquake effect to your entire video, including the place where you haven't flown yet, which is not right. Yeah, that's not right. So what you want to do is have your earthquake effect start as soon as you jump up into the air, which is this frame. So drag your playhead to the frame where you jump up into the air, click on your filter and hit I to set the in point. And then drag your playhead all the way until you're not in the frame anymore and hit O. That's good. So now we have this. Now you might notice that it abruptly starts shaking and abruptly stops shaking, which is not right. So what we want to do is we want to set a keyframe for this amount of motion for every one of these values. So we don't have to go through and hit this button for each one. That'd be kind of ridiculous. What we have to do is we have to click on earthquake, hit this arrow over here, and hit add keyframe. That automatically adds keyframes for every single setting here. So let's go to the beginning and set the keyframe to 0 for everything. Just bring all the sliders all the way to the left, except for mix. You can, actually no, you can drag that to the left as well. That's good. And now go to the end and do the same thing. Drag everything as far to the left as it can go. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. Left, left, already on the left, and left. Okay. So now we should get this effect. I should probably play more of it so you can actually see what's going on. Okay, and play it. So now, after doing all that stuff, you should see this, which I'd say looks pretty good. Now, if you want to match the original video exactly, let's pull up a preview over here. You might notice that on this frame here, there's a little bit of smoke under my feet. Okay, so we want to add some smoke to match the original video, which you can see up here, by using the particle emitters built into Motion 5. So in these 3 tabs up here, you'll see File Browser, Library, and Inspector. You want to click on Library. And then you'll see a bunch of stuff to the left over here. So you want to go down to Particle Emitters, and then Pyro, which is, no, not Pyro, I'm sorry. You want to go down to Smoke. And then you want to find an option that doesn't look ridiculous. That's a bit slow. Hang on a second, I'll get back to you as soon as I find something that looks good. Okay, so I chose basic smoke. I'm just going to drag this in to the group with the earthquake filter so that the filter will affect that. Make sure that the playhead is on the frame right before, well, as soon as you begin the jump. And now, take this little box that represents the particle emitter and drag it like right under your feet. That's good. And now, you want to drag your playhead to the part that you think you should see smoke at. Now, as you can see, the smoke starts incredibly too late, so, was that proper English? Who cares? Anyway, what you want to do is you want to speed this up so that it doesn't look so insanely stupid. So now, let's go into the inspector again, and you should see that it automatically puts us on this emitter tab, which appeared here, replacing the image tab. So what you want to do is, of course, scroll down until you see speed here in the cell controls and increase that. Just mess with it and then scrub back through to make sure that your smoke appears at the right moment. So that looks pretty good. Let's play it through to make sure it looks okay. Whoa, that is way too much smoke. Okay, what we want to do is we want to have this end like right after we fly away. So drag your playhead to a couple frames after you leave the frame and hit O to make it disappear. So as you can see, after hitting O to make it go out like that, the smoke just abruptly disappears, which doesn't make sense because that doesn't happen in real life. You want to make it fade out over time. So first you want to go into your properties tab over here and find blending opacity. Drag that all the way to the left to set it to 0. Make sure you're at the end of the clip and set a keyframe. That's good. Now go like, I don't know, 3 or 4 frames before that and then drag that slider all the way to the right. Now you should have fully opaque smoke. You might not be able to see it, but it's here. Let's actually hide this. This is a bit distracting. Not this. That. There we go. Hide the clean plate and you should see smoke here. If you don't, then I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, you should see the smoke disappearing over time as it would in real life. That's good. That's very good. So let's reveal the clean plate again by hitting that button over there. and you might notice that this smoke is a bit too dark. I mean, you probably didn't even see it until I revealed it to you a second ago. So what we want to do is increase the brightness by adding a brightness filter. So click on the filters button again, go down to color correction, and go up to brightness. Now what you want to do is drag this slider until the smoke looks white, which it did in the original video. So that's good. And now, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. So if we play it through now, we should see this. Okay, so that was pretty good. But the smoke doesn't disappear as gradually as I'd like it to, so let's scroll back down to the smoke in the timeline and drag this beginning keyframe further to the left so that it starts to disappear earlier. That looks a lot better. So let's play it through and see how it looks. That looks very good. So now, after you have something you're satisfied with, what you want to do is decrease the length of your footage so that you're not exporting more than you need to. So take this indicator of the end of the play range and drag it to the left, but make sure you don't cut yourself out. Like, this is a good area over here. So all this space over here was just a still image. That wasn't necessary. We just made this clip a lot shorter. So now it's only about 4.5 seconds for me. So when you're done with this, all you have to do now is export. Whoa, we should save that. So I did Command S, or you can do File Save as you would do in other programs, and type in flying effect tutorial thing or whatever, and hit save. So now let's go to share and export, because of course we want to have this saved out as a file. There. Okay, it finally showed up. So now what we want to do is we want to set our export settings. So I had my export set to Apple ProRes 4444. I don't exactly remember why I said it like that, but I did. I don't think this matters too much. I think same as source should be okay. Anyway, you can set it to whatever program you want to open with. Here's an interesting setting. You can include either just the video or the video and the audio. But if your clip is like mine, then your audio is all mixed up because it automatically duplicates the audio as it duplicates the video footage. So you probably have 3 layers of audio all playing at different times like me. So you can set this to include video only. And duration should be use play range, so that instead of using a whole 10 seconds of unnecessary footage, you only use 4.5, which is good. Now, switch into this render tab and look at all these options over here. This probably looks a bit confusing. Sorry, I got distracted. Anyway, this stuff over here probably looks a bit confusing. So, in this color option over here, you'll see color plus alpha. You can leave that alone. Render quality. You probably want to set this to best unless you have a slow computer, in which case you can set it to normal. My computer's slow, but I don't think it's slow enough for normal, so I'll just set it to best. You can actually just set it to draft if you're really impatient and you don't care if your video is low quality. I mean, it'll still be 1080, but it'll be pixelated, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and defies the point of 1080p in the first place. But anyway, set it to best if you want good quality footage and you're not impatient. So fields, I'm not really sure what this does. I think this has to do with motion graphics, as most of this stuff does. So I just turned everything off. Camera should be set to active camera because that's the only one there. Again, that's motion graphics stuff. Off, off, and off. Summary, you don't need that. This just tells you everything that you just did. Hit next and select the location for your video file to be saved. I like to save it to my videos folder. Flying effect tutorial video. Save it, and it should automatically start exporting for you. So, of course, this will take a while because I said to best. So, or maybe it won't take a while. Holy crap, that's rendering fast. I was going to pause it, but what's the point? I mean, it's going to be done in like 10 seconds. And now you should see your video file open up. So here's the final video. Anyway, so I guess that's it. Hope you liked it, and if you want more tutorials, just say so. I mean, I'd be into like doing Blender tutorials and stuff, so yeah. I'm Chris, and this has been a friggin' dope Chris Kendall VFX tutorial. Well, bye.